And welcome to the Star Wars Reporter podcast, the official podcast of StarWarsReporter.com. Welcome to the podcast. I just had a brain fart. I think it's too cold in the office right now, but just want to welcome everyone to, it's been 2 weeks since our last podcast, and we're getting back into it. Before we get started, just want to make sure that everyone hits that like and subscribe button. That really helps us out. It also helps me out for my brain medicine, apparently. And be sure to check out StarWarsReporter.com. I think I probably say that website address 1,000 times during the podcast. And of course, follow us on our other social media, which is Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I don't have the symbol on there. And if you don't, C-3PO will stomp Baby Yoda to death. So,
oh no.
I don't know if Disney's can sue me for that, but I don't have any money.
That sales pitch you just delivered reminds me of a movie, Weird Al Yankovic's movie UHF. I don't know if you guys ever seen that movie. If you haven't seen it, you should. There's one as a used car salesman. He says, "Come on down, buy a car. If you don't come down, buy a car. I'll club this baby seal." There's a It's hilarious. There's a seal in the car. That's right. I'm gonna glove it. So I thought it was a really similar sales pitch. It was very effective, Steve. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to use that in everything I do at work with my wife and kids. I'm gonna see if that works.
Yeah.
All right. So, just want to introduce the scoundrels. We'll start with Darth Slowo. Welcome back.
I'm back for another round.
I know. Again, sorry, I'm looking at your background.
Yeah, I know, right? Like
I feel dumber every time we do a podcast. It's like see, there's Adam, there's Dork, there's Adam, there's old guy with his toys, and of course we got Trooper Todd with us.
Hello there.
He's less of a dork than I am. He's got toys, but
I don't have. Well, I got more toys on this side that you guys can't see, but I do have credentials too. Just they're not behind me. I have awards and stuff. I win awards and stuff for what I do. So my diplomas and plaques are much smaller and somewhere in there.
I have credentials too. It's a Blockbuster rental card.
Yes,
those are still around, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
Platinum member.
Yeah, I think I became like a Jedi fan club member or something. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, they didn't think so on my resume, and I still got hired where I did. So lots of stuff going on. The main topic we're going to talk about was the 1983 documentary from Star Wars, The Jedi, the making of a saga. And I know there's a new version, up to date, all this kind of nice stuff on Disney Plus. I forget what it's called.
It's called Empire of Dreams, but actually it's not new. There's nothing new about it. It's actually from the special edition. If I got the DVD collection way back when, it's pretty much the exact same thing. There's might be some new stuff, but most of stuff, but all recorded from the mid-90s.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't feel so bad then. And the main reason why I kind of chose this, it's because it kind of has, I've talked about it a million times, maybe on the podcast. I've written about it in articles. It was kind of like the pivotal moment for me. I think I was 12 at the time. I said this story, right? It was like, as a kid, I wanted to be Luke Skywalker when I grew up. And then I saw this on TV. Actually, it was on TV a few times, or they like replay it here and there on TV. And it was at this moment I wanted to be George Lucas when I grew up. And I was just like, it was the first time I ever seen anything like that. The behind the scenes, the special effects, and there's a lot of stuff. I kind of pulled out some moments, and I'll pull up the documentary, go over some of it. But everything that George Lucas, the very, very young George Lucas, or so it seems,
looking good,
would talk. I was just glued to what he was saying, And I finally found, we'll get to that later, the quote I've always tried to quote that he said, but could never find it. So I don't think I got it exact, but it's one of the things I thought was really interesting and explained a lot of what he did back then and how he filmed stuff. And, we'll get into that. So it was kind of like a nostalgia thing. It was kind of like something that had a lot of meaning to me. And I thought, because when I was first hitting you guys up, I'm like, let's do that documentary on Disney Plus. Just really simple, right? Disney Plus, do that. And then I wondered, right? And I found this on YouTube. Someone had uploaded it, and I thought, no, this is what we have to do. So I was a little selfish in that point.
It's pretty neat because having watched both now, like, this one we're going to be talking about tonight is basically wasn't exactly about the making of. The other one was the process of making the challenges, the hurdles they had to overcome, sort of thing. Where this was more just really dealt with a lot of the behind the scenes stuff where it comes to building stuff, sort of thing, right? It was as a neat little look. I have seen this one too, Steve. Probably back when you watched it too.
Yeah,
it's been a long time since I've seen this one though. But yeah, it was very good.
So
yeah, this was the first time I watched it. It was fascinating. Like I grew up with the VHS trilogy, the remastered one, and the first 5-10 minutes on every VHS tape was the behind the scenes of updating it from the original to the remastered version, which I'm pretty sure is makes part of the Empire of Dreams, the Disney Plus one, or whatever it was called. But this was my first time going through this one. I think this was a great watch, just having finished Book of Boba Fett a few weeks ago. I think this was great to sort of go back and see the original making of these pivotal scenes and these pivotal characters.
For me, it was kind of because I watched Empire of Dreams, and then for a week later, my daughter invited a friend over. My daughter and her friend are getting into lightsaber spinning, like doing lightsaber tricks, and so they decided, let's do a marathon. So they came over, and 12 hours straight, basically, they watched the first 6 movies the first day. Then they went to bed around 2 a.m, woke up around 7, and they watched the last 3. So they watched all 9 movies. In a short span. So there was, and I got to, of course, see lots of it during the time they were watching it, and of course then watching this right afterwards is a really neat perspective, watching the films just recently to this. It was like you're saying, pretty cool to tie the things in together after just freshly watching it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah and I kind of, what I liked about it was the fact that it was so raw and old in this version of it. Even the sound, everything was so different. The that glow around the ships when you would see it, we didn't notice it when we were younger watching it, and then they had been able to fill in all the white around the ships flying and stuff. But it was just so cool to kind of see that, and nostalgia.
Yeah, it was. I got a little bit of nostalgia too. It reminded me of the VHS days. Even the first introduction, there was a montage of everything. Now available on your VHS, and then of course it cuts to the now for your feature presentation. I was like,
exactly.
My goodness, I haven't heard those words in a long time.
Well, even the CBS Fox animation logo that came in, I went, oh man, I haven't seen that in probably 30 years. It was just like a stroll down memory lane of the old days.
Yeah, it's so great. I just want to get to just a couple of things that came up in the news cycle. I just want to touch on that before we kind of get really deep on the documentary. And that was this news here.
Great Scott!
There we go.
I saw a tweet on this one. They were saying that if his character's name isn't Del Orion, there's going to be riots.
Oh,
that is so perfect. That is so perfect. Yeah, this was shocking. So Christopher Lloyd joins Mandalorian season 3, right? So this is from the Hollywood Reporter. And then they have their dad joke here, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, where he's going, the actor won't need roads, but a hyperdrive might help. And I just think to myself, how old is Aaron Crouch and Boris Kitt? Anyways, it was just kind of a funny dad joke. And what I also found interesting is that a lot of the comments from people were, like we posted it on our social media and even the Twitter for Hollywood Reporter. A lot of people are like, that guy's old. Just like, it was so many people having a problem because he was an old man. So I think that's interesting. But what they're saying here in the Hollywood Reporter is that that he was on the call sheet for The Mandalorian, and that it's going to be going into its third season. Character details for the role are being kept locked in the trunk of a DeLorean. But it has been described as guest starring in nature. Lucasfilm could not be reached for comment. So, it was the same with, I forget his name, the one that played Kuel in the first season, the Dungar that helped him out. I forget the actor's name that did the voice for him, but he was an old guy too. I guess he was an alien, so people kind of look past it. But yeah, this is kind of cool. This would be his. How many of franchises has he been in? So he's been in Back to the Future, connected to Spielberg, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And now this.
He's the bad Klingon in Star Trek 3.
That's right. He's the one that killed or had Kirk's son killed.
Yeah, he was the main antagonist in the film.
Yeah. So and and his first officer was a Klingon guy named Marty, I think. So.
Oh, really?
No, I'm just kidding. It was Marty.
It doesn't sound like a Klingon name, Marty.
I was gonna say Marty.
But you have to say it like a Klingon, like Marty or something,
Sure. I think that's not right.
I hope he gets a little more than like a John Williams cameo in The Rise of Skywalker as the cantina bartender. Like, I hope he gets a little bit of a compelling role for sure. I mean, it would be well suited to him to play like even a cloning scientist. Like he's the mad scientist, right? So it wouldn't be, a huge leap to connect those dots.
If you're bringing in Christopher Lloyd, you got to do something with him. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Totally.
You just can't be like a little stand in the background serving drinks, for one shot. It's got to be something.
Yeah. Well, he is like a real actor, so.
Well, exactly.
Now, is he going to be funny or is he going to be serious, right? Is he going to be, what was the name of the Klingon, like Kang, or is he going to be Doc Brown? And it'd be funny if he was one of the cloning scientists, so people are calling him Doc. That would be funny. That would be funny if he had like that crazy Einstein hair, but I mean, I don't think they're going to go that far.
I think it'd be something different and original, possibly.
Yes.
Maybe a Mandalorian. Who knows?
Wow.
An old Mandalorian.
Yeah. Because he's Mando's on his quest now too after the Book of Boba Fett to make his way back to Mandalore. So maybe he's an ancient Mandalorian.
Maybe he'll know the ways of the Darksaber.
Maybe.
Ooh. All right.
Possible. He looks old and wise, does he not? Played it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, so if the third season is going to be him going back to Mandalore to purify himself in the waters under Mandalore, right? So he can be, stay a Mandalorian because he took his helmet off. Maybe we'll see him there. I don't know, but that was kind of some small news that's kind of confirmed, but not that kind of came out. So because Lucasfilm cannot.
It'll be good to see him back. Like I don't think I've seen him in anything for a while now, so it'll be good to see him back.
Yeah, he's just been in small parts, and last movie I can think I saw him was Piranha. I'm sure he's been in other ones since then. The Piranha one, the new ones that came out, he played a scientist that was studying that, figured out these piranha were hiding somewhere.
Wow. Okay.
I'm sure he's been stuff after that, but.
And all I want to do is make Back to the Future jokes whenever anything's brought up, and I got to stop that. I'm sure he's probably sick of it. Actually, years and years ago, at the Fan Expo in Toronto. I was waiting in line for something else, and he was walking by with his handler, the volunteers, to go into one of these back areas, in the back hallways of the hotel where they probably take their breaks or whatever. And man, he looked, because he went through me here with the guy they cut through. He looked miserable. He did not look happy and stuff. And I remember thinking to myself then, after, I was like, wow, he's looking pretty old. After I just criticized people for saying that, but he did not look so happy at all. And the same thing kind of happened to me a year later, but it was Stan Lee who cut through, and people were like, Stan, and freaking out. And he was still, he was like 100 years old then, and he was just like still full of whatever. So it was kind of interesting. People were harassing him and patting him on the back, and I was like, ugh, get out of here, Stan. Run.
Run.
But, so I just wanted to throw that out there before we forgot, because I just thought it was interesting, and it's probably true, because the Hollywood Reporter is probably always right. So
can't see why it wouldn't be right.
Exactly. So let's get to, I'm going to share this now, because I watched this a few times now, and sorry, the secretary is off today. And here it is. So here's this documentary, and so we can talk about this. I'm just going to run some of this. Just this opening I thought was really cool. I hope there's not too much John Williams music here, but...
Here we go again.
The shield is down. The cunning of the enemy.
Soon the rebellion will be crushed, and young Skywalker will be one of us.
Get alongside that one.
The courage of a rebel.
I am a Jedi. Not yet. You must confront Vader.
The power of evil.
Is Darth Vader my father?
Return
Spoilers.
of the Jedi. May the trilogy be with you for the best price ever. Plus, From Star Wars to Jedi is also available at a new low price.
All right. So I actually thought I was going to be starting a little sooner. I was trying to avoid the advertisement, and
that's the best part.
Galaxy very, very near. George Lucas imagined a world no one else had ever seen. When he placed it on screen in Star Wars in 1977, he asked us to...
So this was the thing for me too, when this first came on TV, and this was being hosted by Mark Hamill. I thought that was very, very cool. That was kind of like, let me fix that. I thought that just blew me away on top of that. And the outfit that he wears in this, it's funny. Mark Hamill wore that to other like interviews and different events and stuff like that. It was like his own clothes. This kind of gold, let me try to find it. This gold vest he was wearing. Is it in this one?
I don't remember seeing him on. I don't remember seeing him on camera at all.
No, sorry, he just narrates. I was thinking of the one that he did for The Empire Strikes Back, the making of that.
Okay, yeah, because he doesn't appear. This is his voice only.
Yes. So let's just get right into it. I think it's going to be the perspectives I'm looking forward to, right? Todd, you as a filmmaker and all the behind the scenes stuff. Adam having to watch this ancient version of what these old guys watched back when they were like 12, I guess. We were like 12 when this was out. So it'd just be really interesting to get your perspectives on it.
Where to begin, really? Like, as a filmmaker myself, I thought it was really kind of weird because it skipped all over the place. When you're watching it, it start off at, like, right now it's starting at Empire Strikes Back, and then it goes to Star Wars, then it goes Return of Jedi, then back to New Hope. I'm like, whoa, it was just all over the map. It was just, again, not that it was disjointed at all. It's just basically, I think it was George Lucas sitting down having a conversation, talking about his process, sort of thing. It was just kind of neat because you heard some things from George Lucas in this little special that you never really talked to before. Like, the one I really liked the most was he's talking about Empire Strikes Back and introducing a new character, which was Yoda. And just like, here you have this rubber puppet, is it going to be believable? Is it going to work? Everything seems good. Frank Oz is doing good. It's entertaining. It's really good. But until you record it, or not record it, back then, let's film it. You have no idea if it's going to work. And then you're working within the edit bay. Again, you just don't know, right? So that was kind of neat. And also another one part was how they really broke down the whole entire Rancor monster scene. They really broke that down lots, and they broke it down. But just actually the whole entire costume things and all the creatures they had to create for Jabba's. They talked about, which we've all seen before, and other things where George Lucas was not happy with the cantina scene in A New Hope, right? And this was his chance in Return of the Jedi to do Jabba's palace more of the way he wanted to, right? So they said they had over 90 different creatures they had to design, which cost over $1 million, and it took a year to make all the costumes. Like, you have to just think about that. Like, when you're watching the movie, we watch it in an hour and a half, 2 hours. People spent a whole year of their life making these creatures for what? You know what I'm saying? For how much screen time they get. There's some creatures they made. There's a snake creature they're showing. You see in the background. You know what I'm saying? It's just the thought process that goes into it, and just and just even this scene right here, when George Lucas is talking to the directors, and how they break things down. It was just, I thought it was kind of interesting too, and you see George Lucas on set with the directors. Like, George Lucas really is the director's directing the actors, but George Lucas is really calling all the shots still. Like, you know what I'm saying? How the story goes, what creatures he wants in the frame. And it was just kind of neat to see that kind of behind the curtain sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. To see he's not really a hands-off, consultant. He's really getting in there for all of it. Yeah. Like you were saying, with all the aliens and the costuming, that was absolutely fascinating and incredible to see. And Todd, like you said, there's aliens in there I've never seen before. I didn't notice watching it. And then you see the process of making that, and all of that hard work and all of that, creativity and labor from all of these artists to be put into however many minutes of, the opening part of the story is absolutely insane. Like, they spent a year building that barge, right? That's absolutely bonkers to think about how much effort they put into the costumes and the set, and that now it's like, that's unheard of. You just don't do that.
Well, they do, but the thing is, as a viewer, you don't think of what goes into making a movie, like all the behind the scenes stuff. Like, that's why it takes 3 years to make these movies, because the script's done, whatever. But okay, here's a pre-production. It's how it's broken down. Like, they're even doing the speeder bikes. They did it. It's called animatronics. Now animatronics. It's called. It's basically the previs stuff. The speeder bike scene where they had the camera and toys, and they're prevising what it's going to look like in the end, right? Like, just that alone, you know how much time that takes to do? So you're basically creating the whole thing for fake to get an idea what it's going to look like, and then they have to do it for real.
I actually made a point of finding that, because I had the big Boba Fett when I was a kid that they used for this scene, and this is really fascinating.
All right, so this will be
This is the scene you're talking about.
Yeah, the previs.
Focus at about 2 inches. That's it.
Dennis Murin and Joe Johnston aren't playing with toys. They're working with them to make moving storyboards for the speeder bike sequence.
See if we can get the real shots done.
These shots, called animatics, were cut together into a full but small-scale version of the sequence as it would appear in the final film. The editors even added temporary sound effects.
Next shot. Number.
So yeah.
It just really shows what goes in. Like, again, this is a small glimpse. Like, it's not showing the hours and hours. And then people storyboard things. That's somebody drawing pictures frame by frame, building the story, what it's going to look like, so they know what to shoot, what to cut to. So everybody has a reference point. The director has a reference point. The editor has a reference point to what to follow. Right? It's like a roadmap sort of thing. Right? So it was just pretty neat to see what these big Hollywood budget movies are doing. Is something I would do for my little movie here at home, right, with no budget, sort of thing. It's kind of cool.
Totally fascinating to see how much time and effort goes into it, and we only see the end result, right? We don't see all this hard work. But I remember, watching that back to being a kid and watching that scene as a kid and the speeder chase, and that's the only thing I wanted to do. That was one of my favorite vehicles at the time. Is I just wanted to ride the speeder bike. That's all I wanted to do. That was like the coolest thing for me.
Right.
But now as an adult, you're going like, how dangerous is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like it looked cool as a kid. I'll be so awesome. Now I'm going, oh man, the speeds are going. That's so dangerous.
Yeah, I was just always fascinated with all the behind the scenes stuff, and it was scenes like this I really loved, because you know, nowadays there's always a behind the scenes, right? You can look on YouTube even and find all the behind the scenes, blooper reels, the whole bit. But this was kind of new, and seeing the actors in this way, this is kind of a scene where Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford are kind of practicing for the scene where the Ewoks bring them back. They're rehearsing it, and you could see where they're talking about, and then what we actually saw in the film. And I just thought this interaction was pretty interesting.
I say, but these are my friends. 3PO, tell them they must be set free. Then who?
3PO, tell them if they don't do as you wish, you'll become angry and use your magic.
Master Luke, what magic? I couldn't possibly.
Tell them.
It's not going to work as a joke unless we both say exactly the same thing.
Okay, what do you want to say?
Exact same
tell
pace.
them or just
tell them. Let's both do it carefully.
Okay. Tell them.
Oh, can I do it too?
No.
Okay.
But so for me, being making my own movies, again, nothing that's Hollywood or anything like that, but this is what happens on set when you're working out with your actors or you're collaborating together, sort of thing, right? Like, you know, that's exactly the stuff that happens, the magic sort of thing, you call it, sort of thing, right? Sort of, and just be seeing, like, it's kind of refreshing as a, you know, independent, small but no budget, micro budget filmmaker. You're seeing people with big budgets, you know, millions and millions of dollars, and they're doing the exact same thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's just, you know, it's all the collaboration. You know, okay, let's work on this sort of thing. Like, again, they're pitching ideas to each other. Oh yeah, that's really, of course, the director in the end will have the final say, because that's not exactly how it worked in the movie.
It didn't work that way in the movie. No.
Yeah. So obviously the director, they might have shot this way, but then they went with a different direction in editing, right? So, but again, still very, very fun to see them collaborating in a creative way and behind the scenes.
Yeah, so it was that kind of stuff I thought was cool.
That was absolutely fascinating to see that behind the scenes and see, like you said, Todd, see the magic happen. There was another one that stuck out to me with it was Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher just hanging out in the Jabba's
palace.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
in Jabba's palace, just having like a conversation and joking around. I thought that was just awesome to see that.
And Angus Scrum was interacting with him too, right? Angus Scrum was interacting with him too. It's quite good.
Yeah,
I think it's near the beginning, Steve. I think.
Yeah, I think it's
because they did Return of the Jedi pretty early. It looked, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, after
how many guys did they fit in that puppet? Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that.
I think it was 6 people.
In the, you know, before I didn't realize how many people actually went into Jabba. And there's one guy with a stogie, you know, blowing the smoke through the pipe too, to give the impression that Jabba's smoking too. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. And that was a big deal too, right? That was kind of, from what I can remember as a kid, that was a groundbreaking thing. You know, having this monster-sized puppet, essentially, with all these people in it crushed together, was kind of a groundbreaking thing. I mean, and again, as a kid, I mean, who knew how they did it? You know, Todd, we probably were thinking like, oh, they just made a big robot or something, for all we knew.
No, actually, I remember we had magazine stuff, Steve. Like, I remember one time we were looking at a magazine and we actually said it had 6 puppet operators for it, sort of thing. Because you know, there was those kind of behind the scenes you could read, but not really see all the time, right? Like, that's what the thing you're saying. It's amazing going back and being able to see what they've done, because we're so used to it nowadays. But now you get to go. You know, it's a great opportunity to see behind the curtain. And like, what I loved about the whole thing is, like, you don't really think about, yes, they have to make it so that fits people, but they made a scale model and they actually had 2, you know, Ken dolls inside of it, so they can know how to construct it, which is really, really kind of something, again, you don't think of, right? But you have to make sure you scale, you're building a model, it's going to fit 2 people. And it was this kind of interesting, creative ways how people, even though you have millions of dollars budget, how they did it back in the 80s, and it's fascinating.
Well, the computers weren't there, right? It's like,
exactly.
I'm sure they do this now. Everything's scaling, everything's done with computers, so they don't have to maybe, I'm guessing they don't have to do the little filming the action figures to kind of figure out what they're doing.
It's all computer animated now. It's all computer animated now.
Do you think there was 6 puppeteers on the platform of the Hutts march in Book of Boba Fett, the two twin Hutts? You think there were 6 puppeteers on a platform, or was that all computer generated?
Times 2, really, because they're carrying 2 of them.
Well,
but here was that scene that you were talking about.
No.
Yeah.
No, the floor drops away. I just go into a tuck and roll, and the most dangerous part is getting out of the way of the Gamorrean guard that falls on top of me, because he weighs about 200 pounds.
That's played by me.
Oh God, that's played by her. Okay, that's when she lost all that crazy amount of weight for that. Yeah, for the slave outfit.
But again, it's just the interaction. Again, I really like the one part too where it talked about it's making all the when they were going. They packed up all the monsters and they flew it over to England or London, right, for the sets. And then they had the actor doing the Angus Scrum, and he's talking like a Muppet sort of thing, right? And that was again another just cool thing. I remember seeing the part where he goes, "Hello, TV land." I've seen that before.
Here
but
it is. Here
you can see a lot more of it, which is really neat.
It was the Tim Rose.
Anybody know what the in-flight movie is? Oh,
this guy here, I was cracking up how he was acting. 18. So here he is here.
Yeah.
Hey, did everybody go to lunch? What's going on here? Hey.
Hello in TV land.
They were a bit disoriented.
So yeah,
right. It's so neat. Well, even had the model, the singing model puppet, how that was all put together. Like
that was cool.
Underneath, and the legs are attached to whatever his legs are doing, her legs are doing, and they have somebody operating the head and and you know how George Lucas was. Well, it wouldn't be kind of cool if it was singing vocals. That was kind of neat. And then in fact, they talked about they wrote a song. The song was in English, and then they translated to this language that it was just so fascinating.
Yeah, look at this. It's computers now, and this guy is underneath. Yeah, look at this. It's crazy.
And they talked about operating the lips, and the lips would be taken out later. Like, it's just so amazing how it all just to think about what it takes to make this.
Doing this right now. There's 3 people.
Oh, and of course,
Max
Rebo,
our guy.
And this is when they're rehearsing to the actual song that was written with English language, right? And of course, it's the fact that somebody wrote a song. Sorry, somebody wrote a song in English and then replaced all the words. You know what I'm saying? Somebody wrote all the words for the song, then replaced it.
I made a note of that too. I was like, how wild is it that they did all of these lines, all of these songs in English, and they had a guy creating alien languages to fill in for that. That is mind blowing.
Okay, go back there, Steve. That character, I didn't see that character at all until the special edition of Return of the Jedi. The one that closed, the one that was singing in Return of the Jedi. Do you see him, the big hairy guy with big teeth? He closed that. Like, that's one character I'd never seen in the movie at all, Return of the Jedi, until they did the special edition. It was made him singing with the female creature.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, he was on the side there.
Oh, was he really? Okay.
They had him in the one scene. They actually had him standing against the wall. He was just one of Jabba's, in kind of the room with the other aliens. And so George Lucas, there he is. So they must have just said, "Hey, let's just use that," and they did the CGI of him being the singer, right?
Yeah. Well, this we're all packing up to go to London.
Yeah.
It was just kind of neat. Just again, I know it takes a long time to do stuff, but you just don't really think it's just how many people on the team making those things. Looks like there's 35, 40 people creating these creatures for a year.
Yeah.
And sculpting. No, George Lucas doesn't like it. Even they showed the different variations of Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I love that.
Model? Like the first one looked like a really fat Buddha sort of thing, and then it always looked too human-like. Then it looked just too, and then just how they went back and forth like that, right? It's just, you gotta think if you're a guy who's creating models for George Lucas to approve, and he's like, I hate that. Like you got to. What do you slunk away? Try again, right? Like just be like, yeah, it's just kind of neat.
Yeah. It was. It's just the evolution of how movies were made then. And actually, I think George Lucas, what they were doing here was not even what people were doing then, and that they were kind of way ahead of their time. Obviously, people were like chasing them on special effects, but like all the practical stuff is just crazy. I mean, the only thing you could say was created by a computer or something were the green screens or the blue screens, whatever they were back then.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty much it. Even, it was just like a few years ago, I realized, maybe it was a little longer than that, 5 or 10 years ago, I realized The Crawl was like painted and they just filmed it and it just moved, right?
Yeah. Nowadays,
it's done by a computer, obviously, and then the amount of painting that they did for scenery, like with all the stormtroopers, when the Emperor's shuttle comes in and things like that. It's like it's paintings. It's incredible what they had to do and could pull it off
and make it look as good as it did. Like now it's.
Oh yeah.
I'm not gonna say it's so easy now, but it is. Right. Like expensive as CGI is to do for make a Jabba the Hutt. But you're not paying. It's not 6 people operating. You got to think the time, the rehearsals, the coordination. Do one take that the arms, the lips, the eyes are all in sync. Like that's crazy. How long you got? Like how long it take to pull that off? For CGI, you do the animation, boom, it's done. Right.
Right.
This is really cool.
Yeah.
The Rancor stuff breaking down the puppet.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just how George Lucas they did they did some composite things early. They was talking about how he wanted the Rancor to be swallowed, sort of thing, right? Like that was his idea, right? Like now when you hear crunch, you cut away back to Luke, then you have the hand going in, and
like he
boom,
slurps it in.
Yeah, he slurps it.
Yeah,
and like so.
And they were going to do a scene like the guy who's the puppeteer here. He was actually going to be in a suit.
Yes.
And standing in this kind of cramped area doing this whole thing. But the puppet worked out. It's just amazing what and here's what you were talking about, Adam, with this whole, they built that whole set.
Yeah.
Just for this, and they could dive into, the rank or the Sarlacc pit. It's just very cool.
And the simple fact you got to think of, like, they had to build it up on these platforms because they want to make sure whatever angle they're shooting, they see desert and not. Nowadays they just put up a big, huge green wall and they don't have to worry about it. But back then you had to worry about it. So therefore, that's why it's built so high and a riser. So that way, wherever camera angle they're looking at, you see sand in the background. You don't see all the trailers. You got to think of it on the ground. They have to move all the trailers. What's in the shot, right? You know what I'm saying? You build it up high, everything you're looking at, you see sand in the background.
Yeah.
But just like how much time and effort that took.
That's fascinating.
There's this part, I just want to get to it now, where George actually was coming up. George Lucas was talking. I always noticed that in the original movies, they have all these fascinating scenes and backgrounds and aliens, and he never just like parked the camera on it. It was just always, he never made such a big deal of it. And as a kid, I was like, oh, I wish I could see more of this and see more of this, right? But he would just film it as it's just part of the world. It was not a big deal. The heroes are flying somewhere, doing whatever. And I always wondered about that. And it wasn't until this documentary where he kind of explained it. And I thought it was very, very cool. I think I got the quote. And this is the quote I've always been trying to do.
Generated. And it slows the pace of the film.
I got that wrong.
Creating the environment. That they spend film time on it. And you don't have to spend too much film time to create an environment. What they're doing is showing off the amount of work that they generated. And it slows the pace of the film down. And the story is not the settings. The story is the story. It's the plot.
So was that kind of quote where, the story isn't the scene, the story is the story, right? Where people are like, when they spend so much time showing you, this cool spaceship or this cool planet, they're showing off. Like, this is his opinion. They're showing off. And you can see that in some big budget movies nowadays where it's like, hundreds of millions of dollars go into this to a movie, and there's so much special effects and craziness, and the story sucks. It is so terrible, but you have this really beautiful movie. And in the prequels, I think that Lucas was actually spending a little bit of time showing off the stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's because he was showing off the technology they were inventing and trying to do, which I thought was kind of funny because it made sense to me that the prequels came out. And I always remembered this quote, but I could never remember it correctly. I'm like, wow, he's just leaving that camera on that scenery, or, you know what I mean? Doing these things.
See, that quote in the prequels make him sound a little hypocritical, quite frankly.
Right.
But I think, again, if you look at prequels, which we've already done a deep dive on, from 1 to 3, that he cut a lot of that crap out. You know what I'm saying? Just a world building sort of thing. Like he just focused more on the story opposed to showing off everything. Like you're saying, I think episode 1, Phantom Menace, was really bad because it just tried showing off too much stuff. Like, look what we can do, sort of thing. But what he says here is something that I apply to my work all the time. It's like, it's serve the story, don't serve ego, right? So, they don't waste time showing all the pretty backgrounds. Yes, I know the carpenters worked really hard to build the sets, but again, you just let the sets be themselves, sort of thing, right? You don't draw attention to it because that takes away from the storyline.
Right.
Yeah. He said that a couple times too. He said that about special effects. I wrote that down too, Steve. He said, special effects without a story is boring, right? It's just special effect for special effects' sake, and totally 100%. And I think you guys are absolutely correct in that he almost lost sight of that at some points in the prequel. But it was also fascinating to see how much of the world he had built in his head, before Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, right? Like, and he was starting to flesh this out, and then even going back to, Todd, our previous discussion in the Jabba the Hutt scene, and that he was so critical of that first film. I thought that was very fascinating too. Like, I'm sure for most Star Wars fans, like A New Hope is, a rung above everything, right? It's the on a pedestal almost, and to hear him self-criticize aspects of the story was a little refreshing, actually, and say, I get another chance to really give this the treatment that I wanted to see. Was really fascinating to hear.
Yeah, just the simple fact that his original idea, which I didn't know about until I watched this thing, was the fact that his intention was to go in with stop frame animation, put a creature in the place of that fellow, the actor he had, right? So, obviously, we all know that if you watch Empire of Dreams, you'll know what happened in episode 1, A New Hope, why he could not do it, because there's no time and no money and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, just the fact that you're saying, he had a chance to, help flesh out that idea, the dream he had, to help bring it to life, sort of thing, right? It's kind of cool.
Totally. And then another very fascinating point to extend that was him talking about, the progression of characters and the importance of the characters, and that his original vision for this whole thing was, taken or inspired by the Vietnam War. And he really wanted those Ewoks to be, to mirror what was going on with the Vietnam War and show that, this technologically advanced superpower is being crippled by this, by the spirit of by the human spirit, I think he said. I think that was very fascinating.
Yeah, I actually let me pull this up because I actually saved that. I thought that was really fascinating. I probably didn't understand it back then as a kid, but where is it here?
One of the main inspirations for the whole project when I first started Star Wars, and it evolved out of my interest.
This is the Ewok battle
in a project I'd been working on at the time about the Vietnam War. And one of the more fascinating aspects of that project was the human spirit, the human element being able to withstand an onslaught of high technology, and how the high technology had failed.
Yeah, I liked it. He was very careful on his word choice of what he was saying there too, right? Like I'm saying, like my understanding. Again, I don't know lots about the Vietnam War, but he's talking about the high-powered people being the Americans going in against the Viet Cong, correct? Yeah, okay, that's why. So that's what I thought. So he's like, so it's an interesting person, like who's as history goes, sort of thing. Like he's, the U.S. isn't necessarily on the right side of maybe that sort of scenario, sort of thing, right? It was just an interesting how he was, trying to be very politically correct, saying what he was saying, sort of thing. But yeah, very, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, at that point, the Vietnam War was only over for a few years, right?
Yeah.
It was like, when did it end? It's like 70, 75, 76, something like that. So
yeah.
Yeah, it was probably a touchy subject. So, and this was the thing as a kid that I was drawn to George Lucas and all the things he was saying, and then all the special effects and seeing him in there like involved, like with the he was in there when like Mark Hamill was getting his Jedi costume going, and I think someone had said that here, like he was at every aspect of everything going on. And he wasn't even the director, right? He was just like so hands-on. So,
well, I also thought it was an interesting thing that was his original idea. I guess when he was first penciling the Star Wars idea, was the big battle scene would be with Wookiees, not Ewoks.
Yes,
totally. Which would have been great. But the thing is, which is fascinating when it comes to storytelling. Yes, Wookiees would have been awesome. But the same thing, he said it would make no sense because we already established that Chewbacca isn't primitive. He can fly ships. He can know. So it makes perfect. The fact that he went away from his original idea, because as cool as it would be to have lots of Wookiees, it didn't make sense for the storyline. So again, story above substance, right? Sort of thing. So
well, he did get his Wookiee battle in the prequels, right? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the exact same thing, Steve. He got another shot at that one too.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, what I thought was really good is because I have a good strong sense that George Lucas likes Ewoks. So he's on. I think he's on mine and Steve's team about the Ewoks. He's an Ewok fan, I'm pretty sure.
And I know people kind of they rag on the Ewoks because they say it was merchandise. It was merchandise, but
I was just going to bring that up too.
Yeah, but could it not have been like what you were saying, Todd? He's like he can't do the Wookiees, so he goes the other way. So, but what did you have to say, Adam, about that?
I was just going to say, I think that was I was blown away by that part, especially because that's really the narrative you hear among fans, especially when critiquing Return of the Jedi. Is those damn Ewoks are annoying. They were only put in to sell more toys, to make the film more money. But we see now that idea, that seed was planted long before the film, right? That was the original idea, is taking, the what happened in the world with the Vietnam War and mirroring that in Star Wars among, aliens, to show this primitive alien, technologically disadvantaged alien still prevailing over the galactic dictatorship. So I think that to me is more fascinating than I think the easy crutch of that, consumeristic view of they just wanted to sell more toys.
Yeah, but really, what were they selling? They were selling back then as action figures, right? There wasn't a lot of. I don't remember plush toys. Do you, Steve?
I don't think it was just the action figures and like the play sets, but I don't remember any other, like, there might have been some books, there might have been just like anything, right? There were some kids books, there was.
But the big thing is there were big scary lizard creatures instead of Ewoks. Like, the whole thing is it's about. There's moments in Return of the Jedi where you're feeling bad for the Ewoks were underdogs. You know what I'm saying? With the rebels, they were all underdogs. It helped still I think it's very challenging to show the amount of Ewoks there probably was there in the battle scene because you're limited by budget and costumes and people and all sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if they did that scene nowadays, there'd be thousands of Ewoks, right? They would like right now. You're watching the movie. It's hard to get the sense that they're outnumbering the stormtroopers. Let's face it, there would have been a lot more Ewoks than stormtroopers and Empire people on the ground, right? So,
most definitely.
Like anything in the wild, you overpower people by numbers. Yes, you're going to take a lot of the Ewoks down, but eventually they're probably going to storm over you, right? And again, we all know that the Ewoks probably ate the stormtroopers out. Like they're probably fierce little wild creatures. You know what I'm saying? There's probably biting going on. They didn't show the biting because it's too graphic, but I don't see what people's hang up is with the Ewoks. Even today, when I watch Return of the Jedi, I still find it believable. I don't know why people don't.
Well, in the comics, I forget what comic series it was. They did kind of get into the things about the Ewoks, right? Like they did make a joke in the opening scene. I wish I had this all pulled up, where they're having the party, the celebration, and the one rebel pilot says to the other, and he's like, "What is this meat? What are we eating?" And he's like, "It's best not to ask," or something like that. But there was
TK.
Yes,
TK steak.
There was also these stories where the stormtroopers were like narrating what happened, like because apparently what happened is some stormtroopers when the Empire first got there and they were setting up, they had run into a band of Ewoks, like these scout troopers. There was like 3 or 4 of them. And so the Ewoks were curious. They're like, "Hey," and so they killed one of them. The stormtroopers killed one of them, and then the Ewoks scattered. And then it was vendetta time. So anytime they could, they were like killing stormtroopers that were out on patrol or doing whatever. But there was a scene where a stormtrooper just standing there on patrol, and they're in the trees, and this news comes down really slow, and then they pull him up, and then his friend's like, where did so and so go? And then the next frame's like, and we found him later, but they're just looking over, and you could just see this bloodied his armor and stuff, and that kind of stuff, right? Where the Ewoks would like drum around the base and do all this psychological stuff, but they couldn't directly take on the Empire at that point. And so they did expand on that and try to give a little more to the Ewoks. I just wish that Favreau and Filoni would kind of, they're not returning my calls. I wish they would. I wish they'd bring them back and show what they could be.
Give it some time. I'm sure we'll see an Ewok resurface. How can you have all this stuff and not show an Ewok eventually? Just
the heroes of the rebellion. If it wasn't for them, Han and Leia and all those people, they'd all be dead. And
see, Rise of Skywalker, I would rather see Ewoks on top of those Star Destroyers than space horses riding across the top.
Yeah, that's right. Would have made more sense for me.
Would have made a lot more sense.
I thought it was interesting. One of the things that George Lucas was saying about Star Wars, what makes Star Wars is like, of course, it's the action and the fast cuts and the fast storytelling and the world building. And I thought that was funny because in my own research, when analyzing fan conversations and consumer data on the Rise of Skywalker, the main criticism was it was too fast. There was too many fast cuts, too many worlds. Like it almost took that too far, whereas with the prequels it was almost the opposite and too slow. Right?
Because Rise of Skywalker was not good. lazy story writing, and you're right, 100% right, and I can see why fans are thinking that, because it was a mess of a movie. Because how many planets were they on that movie? Like 15? Like they're planet hopping. The light speed skipping, I thought was just ridiculous. I thought they needed a navigator to make sure they don't crash on planets, but they're doing just fine. It's there's just so much stuff. It's just happening so fast, and nothing really was grounded in like reality sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing was believable sort of thing all the time. Like I find most of the other Star Wars stories, even prequels, I found everything really I could buy into. You know, this could happen,
Right.
sort of thing.
Right.
So that's why I find, like you're saying, when it comes to storytelling, yes, like with Star Wars in 1977 was a movie that's kind of changed how fast paced the editing was. Like the trench dive, you know, even the blaster fights, you know, there's a lot of editing involved, which, you know, back then you're film, you're cutting film, you're taping it. That took a long time. Computers nowadays, you know, you can do it fast, but back then would have been time consuming. And so, you know, time is money back then too, right? You know, the longer it takes to edit, the more you're paying the editor, blah, 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 blah. But
going off that quote that you just went through, Adam, there was the part where he was talking about, you know, Luke fighting Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi, and that, you know, when he drags Vader out to the ship and takes the helmet off. There was a lot of people that weren't happy about that. I don't remember that. I thought it was cool. I wanted to see what he looked like under there. But, you know, there was that, you know, that question of seeing under the helmet. And he makes a point. He's like, the film is about human frailty, not monsters. It's not a monster movie. And it's, you know, from what was done, say, in the sequels, or what's done in a lot of movies, maybe, it's just like, it's comments like that shows that, I mean, obviously, because it was his creation, but, you know, the love and the thought in what he was doing for the series, you know, especially back then, maybe, there was that extra thought there. And I just thought it was really cool. And then, you know, thinking about it, you know, when I stop, you know, acting like a kid in my brain and start analyzing like an adult, you know, where I'm not like, oh, Luke or spaceships or something like that. It all makes sense, right? It's like, it's probably a story that's been told a million times over the history of humanity anyways, right? So it's really fascinating, the characters. And then you jump to like Rise of Skywalker or The Last Jedi or something like this, and there's just like zero thought put into it.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that point you're talking about, because I thought it was really fascinating too. I got the sense when George Lucas explained that I think there's the people on the production team were questioning the decision to show Vader, opposed to people reacting to it. Because I don't know anybody that said that I wish they didn't show his face. I think going into it, people didn't want to destroy that monster kind of thing, like, you know, humanize him, sort of thing, right? Which, but he stuck to his guns. That's what my sense was when the conversation was more of a pre-production comment, I thought, maybe. But either or,
right.
Just because for one, I've never heard anybody criticize the fact, oh, they didn't show Darth Vader's face, because that was such a warm character arc for Vader, right? Like, I want to see you with my own eyes, look upon you with my own eyes. Like, it was, you know, being a father now. Like, back then, I didn't know as much, but now being a father, like, well, yeah, like I can totally see that, right? It's believable. It's, you make that connection to the character. It's that time where he's now crossed over to the light side. Like, you know, he's put everything else behind. This is it, like, sort of thing, right? So it's a big, huge redemption arc, and if they didn't have a story, would make them. Not saying the ending would be bad, because it wouldn't be bad, but just makes it so much stronger. Like you're saying, like he said, it's the human story. It's about humans and human emotion, and that's what I thought he achieved really well.
I think that's one of my wife's favorite parts. If ever she's in the room and I'm watching that scene, she'll always make that. Well, the first, it made me think the first time she said it, right? When I'm watching the movie and she's in the room where he says, I want to see with my own eyes. And when the helmet comes off, and that first look that he gives Luke, my wife goes, he really loves him. Like, you could see. And like you were saying, I never thought of that. Even as an adult, I'm like, with kids, I'm like, it was that face where he gets it off and he guys that really smile, and you could see it in his eyes, the actor's eyes, right? That he was just like seeing his son for the first time and stuff like that. Now I see it, you know, because of my wife, you know, emotion about that. And she's a million miles away from being a nerd, or, you know, she's like, yeah, Star Wars is fine with stuff, but she's not really into that. But that hits her, that part there.
Amazing, just to go to show how small of a role that was for that character, for the actor, but he had such a momentous thing to pull off with no movement.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
He had to pull it off doing this. And just go to show that, just again, again, I'm not an actor, but I've tried acting and I've directed people acting. It's so hard sometimes to get the thing you're looking for as a director, right? And just the fact that he did, and just look and how good it looks doing nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's a small little smirk, right? Like that's in the eyes. Like you're saying, Steve, you're looking at it and you can tell, like your wife, who's not a Star Wars fan, can come and see that scene, go, wow, he really loves him. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just how powerful of a talent that person was to pull it off with nothing.
Right. And it kind of
I'm
proves,
gonna have to go rewatch it again.
I know, and it kind of proves Lucas's decision right then, right? Because if you can get
Totally,
a non-fan or like a non-nerd to go, to that kind of a scene and it not being Baby Yoda, I mean, that's a lot, right?
Well, that's just it, right? I remember in the theater, I was crying. I'm pretty sure I was crying with you, Steve, when you're sitting next to me and we watched it for the 5th time. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
I was probably crying too. Like, this is it. There's no more Star Wars. It's all over.
Well, it's a highly emotional scene, right? It's just it was again, just because it shows what goes into putting these things together, and just you need everybody there, and everybody has a line to do. Like George talking about, like I mentioned earlier, is Yoda going to work? You have no idea if it's going to work. Even when you're shooting, go, this looks really good. You're in the edit bay. Well, you know what? Doesn't work. You know, it's just amazing how easy it can be.
What they
not
did
working.
with puppets, like that death of Yoda, like like holy crap! It's like where's Yoda's Oscar for that? You know what I mean? It's just like I mean, it's Frank Oz with his hand up his butt, but it was just like they're getting this from a puppet. They're getting this death scene from a puppet. It's crazy. Right? It's crazy.
No, that's exactly it. Even like you look at Empire Strikes Back when Yoda's inside the thing, pulling out all the stuff and throwing around and finds the flashlight. Oh, like how realistic. I know it's a plastic thing, but it looks so like the flesh looks real, the movements look real, and just how much work that is to pull off. Because not just Frank Oz, there's other people operating all the pieces, right? Like and everything has to work in unison. Like somebody's controlling the eyes. Frank Oz isn't controlling the eyes. Right. Like just how it all has to come together. It's just I just can't imagine doing this myself and just having the patience to pull that off, because it's like a lot of patience.
I know. And you're wondering, like, you could understand everything was practical, everything had to be created. It's like movies cost way more with and understand it's the difference, right? It went from practical to computers. Now with Favreau and Filoni, they're doing this hybrid, but man, all the work they had to do, and movies are costing a hell of a lot more without doing it. What seemingly is as much work as they're doing, like six people in Jabba the Hutt. Like that's just nuts. But no computers except for Atari, Commodore 64.
Yeah.
But there was a quote that I put a big asterisk about, and it's a quote at the end where George Lucas is talking about kind of the whole franchise and his connection to it and his, and I thought it was really awesome. And it's sad that now it's not his anymore. And I know that he, kind of got disheartened by Hollywood and the whole bit, and he was kind of done with it all. And that's what sold it. But I just want to bring up just this one quote here. I'll bring the screen up again. And I just thought it said a lot to me about, I think I got it in the right spot. Oh, Jesus.
I think what happens in a project when you're with it and with the characters is, which is what happened to me in the first one, sort of led me along this course, is you fall in love with the characters and you fall in love with the environment. It's like a home. You feel very comfortable making up things that happen in there. It becomes your own little fantasy land, I think. And the reality is I love that world. I mean, there are friends there. It's like a home. I have a home there. And so there's always going to be a desire on my part to go home again or to be with my friends again.
So it was so sorry. It's so nice to hear that song. I prefer that song than the special edition.
Oh yes, yeah.
Sorry,
I
go
do
ahead,
love that.
Steve.
No, I was just gonna say that's just it's kind of like if he only knew then what he knows now, right? That he was gonna be selling his home that he loved, right? The characters he loved to the Disney company. You know what I mean? That it's just kind of like, how much his heart and soul was into it then, and I understand, the reasons why he sold it, etc. But it's got to kind of sting.
Well, you got to think so too, because the new trilogy didn't go over so well, right? Too, like it's divided Star Wars fandom, right? As a creator, as the originator of it, you would have some attachment to it, even though you didn't create those 3 movies. I think you could possibly be disappointed what they did with Luke Skywalker, right?
No, yeah,
right. And then of course you have Filoni and them trying to fix that debacle and give some hope, give some hope to his creation, right? So it's again, yeah, like I agree. I imagine it would have been really tough for him.
So, I mean,
he did get to go back and do the first 3, and I mean, if you consider his body of work, it's still a fairly complete arc from episode 1 to 6. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, it was interesting to watch my daughter and her friend watch the Skywalker saga. They brought up a lot of questions to me, like the one thing that makes no sense to me, and I had no answer for, is like, how come Obi-Wan could not recognize C-3PO and R2-D2? He's got a legitimate claim there,
right.
Unless he's just playing dumb in New Hope. But the most shocking thing I saw, I felt, was my daughter and her friend really did not like A New Hope. They said it was boring. But again, I think after watching the first 3 prequels, I think they were on Star Wars overload. In the next film, I just think that they weren't paying attention. They're too busy gabbing, sort of thing. I think that was the problem, because how can you watch that movie and not? It's like really one of the most solid stories ever told.
Wow.
I just think they were just so distracted and just were feeling a bit of a burnout at that point in time after watching, they just finished 6 hours of movies. They're all starting their
Sounds like you're
7th
trying
hour.
to justify there, Todd.
Well, how I kept saying you guys have to watch this movie again because you're wrong. So, how can you like they ranked it down low? Like I asked them afterwards, I said, "Do you rank your movies?" And both of them thought Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, was the best one, and then their second favorite one, Revenge of the Sith. They love Revenge of the Sith.
Of course.
Oh,
but
okay.
now you have to understand they're both 17-year-old girls turning 18. It was because Obi-Wan and Hayden Christensen are hot.
Yeah.
My daughter's in
love.
My daughter's in love with Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Oh, I get that now. So
you do?
Who isn't in love with Obi-Wan though? Like, come on, it's Ewan McGregor.
Yeah,
I also
pretty cool,
think though,
I'm only human.
Like the cultural impact, we're so far removed from the actual, cultural impact and significance of the first 3 movies. Like, so many innovative things and groundbreaking things were done in those first 3 movies that it's hard to for someone freshly coming into this and seeing an old flick to really grasp the significance of the special effects, of the story at the time. Right now, if you watch story, it's quick cuts, great CGI, mostly great CGI, phenomenal acting, and big budgets. But to go back and to see all of that done in that point in time, you need to also respect how innovative it was at the time. And maybe we're at a point in time now where we're so far removed with that many new Star Wars fans don't have that same level of respect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But without Star Wars, we wouldn't have any of these Marvel movies. Like, what I'm saying? Like, they paved the way for all the other movies to come up, and Matrix, you name it. Like, everything points back to what Star Wars did back in 1977. And it was funny because my daughter, like I said, did the whole entire marathon. She came home. She came home, and I was watching this thing over lunch, this documentary, and she's looking at some of the footage they're showing again, from the movie. She's like, "You watching Star Wars?" I said, "No, I'm watching a documentary, the making of it." She's like, "Huh? So what?" She's like, "Well, you know what? The effects look really good still." Like, I think she watched all the context of all the movies. Maybe some of the older ones didn't stand up to today, but again, now she's watching stuff again in the documentary and without parallel to the other ones. She's like, actually, you know what? This looks really good. So it's kind of neat that she kind of recognized the fact that they were bashing episode 4, A New Hope, but then now she's going, maybe we were just not paying attention, sort of thing. She still thought it looked fantastic. So
yeah,
I felt like a proud father when they were watching. I must admit.
That was really good. I was gonna make that joke, like, watching this, the behind the scenes, just how raw and old it was. That's what it looked like back in the 80s, Adam. Like, we were all out of focus, and everything was washed out. It was really bad, and we all had weird voices.
Was going bad.
Nope, that's just what TV looked like back then, man.
Oh,
well, see, for me, being a guy who works in film and TV and doing documentaries, like the interview with George Lucas is just looks awful. Like, if you look at, there's a thing in film, it's called rule of threes. The eyes are in the top third. If you look at his shot, his eyes are right in the middle of the screen like this, and you have all this monster headroom, right? So it just looks like, as a person, like, that looks so. If I shot like that, I would get in so much trouble. It looks like you have a plant behind him.
Room for the volume in his hair, though.
Oh,
yeah, look at that.
Yeah,
and
sure,
hey, I have to make a mention of his beard. I've always, in recent times, I've just had a problem with his beard because it's basically this line.
Yeah,
doesn't even go
line around his chin.
It's like hair all the way down around his chin, down to his neck, but he has this like little line that doesn't even cover everything down below, right? And it's like, he's George Lucas, he can do what he wants. But when I saw this, I was like, oh, that's right. He had the same beard as Steven Spielberg back then. You know what I mean? So,
well, maybe because he has no chin now, just kind of like from here to there. Maybe that's why he looks weird with a big beard. So maybe his wife says shave it. So who knows?
Yeah, he looks. Yeah, I mean, obviously he looks young. It was like 40 years ago or whatever. So.
That would have been 40 years ago now? I guess it would, yeah.
Yeah, well, Return of Jedi 83.
Well, it'd be probably 35, I'm going to say.
Yeah, about that, for that. But yeah, it was 40 years for A New Hope, wasn't it? 40, 30?
77, New Hope came out.
Yeah, so anyways, that was just a little nitpick. I was obviously getting into fashion talk now. But go to my makeup channel for that.
Curse. Beard looks terrible.
Yeah. So I just thought, that's that. I just thought it'd be kind of fun because I found this and it brought back a lot of nostalgia. If we actually did, seeing that there's nothing going on until May.
I'm not gonna lie. Full disclosure, I was a little cheesed that we decided you're not going to do the Empire of Dreams after I watched 2.5 hours of it, sort of thing. And then like, oh, what you mean? I have to watch something else now? I was like, oh man, because I'm super busy right now. But I was actually really glad. I thought for sure it'd be stuff I've seen a million times, and it turns out I know I've seen it, but I've only seen it like once, maybe twice. I was lucky. So it was a nice. And again, the fact that it showed so much different stuff from all the other stuff I've seen. So I thank you. I apologize for me being a little secretly going, what? Come on, man. I was a little upset with you, but now I'm not. So thank you.
Right. I'll make sure to do that next time. I'll be like, let's do whatever it is on Disney Plus and say, hey, I found it, from the 80s on YouTube. So
I found a really crappy video on YouTube. Let's watch that instead.
It was a lot of fun, and I'm most happy that I found that quote that he said about the special effects or the scenery and stuff like that. So
yeah, it was good.
It's just fun to see this kind of stuff. But obviously filmmaking has come a long ways, and I'm glad they can do what they do now. But man, especially Lucasfilm and all those guys, they were masters, and it was groundbreaking. It was really cool. Yeah, and I never got my dream of being George Lucas.
Too. It was really cool to see like them making all the aliens, because I know Todd and Steve, that's something that came up almost every week in Boba Fett is how good do those aliens look, and to see how much effort went into the actual creation of them was absolutely fascinating. So it would be awesome to get hopefully another look at those cool aliens again when Obi-Wan comes out here shortly.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
Yeah. So, all right, everyone, thanks for tuning in. I think we've gone back into blurry nostalgia enough for Adam before he starts to question his own eyesight. But be sure to check out StarWarsReporter.com. Tune into our next episode where we'll be talking about something Star Warsy, and we thank you for tuning in. Say goodnight, guys.
Good night, guys.
I was hoping someone was going to say that.